Hello everyone, this is Dr. Manhattan. Over the last 30 to 40 years, the topic of epidemics and zombies has repeatedly become the cause of the emergence of true phenomena in popular culture. Moreover, the theme of zombie epidemics has been successfully exploited both in the gaming industry, as exemplified by the magnificent series of computer games Resident Evil, and on the big screens and in series. Just remember how much hype there was around the movie 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later and the series Walking Dead. And the first part of the adaptation of Resident Evil, What Can I Say, also made a splash and, together with the game, provided several generations of children with a whole set of phobias and fears. But today we're not talking about classic zombie viruses. If you want me to make a separate video on this topic, then write in the comments. Today, we will talk about how the disease from the Last of Us universe differs from diseases in other zombie universes, why it is so scary, and how realistic what is shown in the game and series is. The main difference is that it actually exists in our world. Just take a look at these photos. Today, we will examine what cordyceps really is, I will read a few scientific articles, and what, in theory, the disease could do to humanity. There will be no spoilers in the video, so don't worry, I won't spoil the plot of the series for you. The difference between cordyceps and classic zombies is that the game developers really delved into science before creating, for example, a clicker or a runner in the early stages of infection. By observing nature, the developers discovered a rather strange widespread disease among insects, namely cordyceps infection. In the game, it all started on an autumn day when the city literally went crazy and they saw how many people became insane. But what if we look, for example, at this ant that allowed the cordyceps fungus to invade its body? This infection immediately begins to act on its brain, and it immediately heads closer to the other ants, but other ants grab the infected one and carry it as far away as possible to a quiet place until it starts to mutate. And I'm not making this up. This is our nature and this is a BBC report. In The Last of Us, the action often takes place in dark and abandoned places, usually either basements or barricaded hotels or floors in a regular house. In especially dangerous places, the game's heroes immediately put on gas masks, because spores are flying around that can enter the body through normal breathing, just like they entered this insect for example. According to the plot, the infection was transmitted to humans from grain products brought from South America, spreading on the way to Central America and Mexico. The initial stage of infection is still a somewhat similar appearance to humans. It's a person who is no longer quite adequate and has initial mutations. The infected person looks at the ground, walks without understanding who he is, but sees well, and if he catches sight of you, he will definitely run after you. His speed is the same as that of a human, and the main goal is to infect you. The cordyceps takes control of the poor person's brain and tries to spread. A fully developed cordyceps looks much more frightening. Clickers. A full-fledged fungus grows in the head, the organs of vision stop working, because they no longer exist, they burst, and the brain starts working differently, and the vocal cords are used differently as well. The same thing happens in nature with insects after infection. After infection, the insect seems to freeze in place and slowly grows out into whole clusters of fungi. This kind of fungus grows for 3 weeks right out of the ant's body, and as a result, an ordinary ant begins to look like a creature from some horror movie. In the finale, balls of various parts of its body grow on the ends of the clusters, which burst and infect all the other insects around with spores. And all the other insects also begin to suffer from this terrible thing. The same is done by some infected in The Last of Us game, which explode near you, spraying spores around still living and healthy creatures with the aim of dispersing all this stuff. In our real life, there are thousands of varieties of this fungus that grows on different insects. If you look at the mutations of the fungus and then recall the recent COVID-19 quarantine, the monsters from The Last of Us don't seem so fantastic after all. But the most interesting thing is that currently this fungus, that is, the growths on insects, is being purchased by athletes for consumption. It turns out that many top athletes use this fungus to increase their endurance, and currently cordyceps is considered one of the most effective and popular supplements/nootropics, basically a fungi in the field of sports nutrition that you can take to improve your results. In simpler terms, many athletes now consume this as a sports supplement, but all its pros and cons are not fully understood. However, you can buy and take it right now. This fungus is represented on the market by a huge number of brands, and who knows, maybe The Last of Us is not that far from us. For now, only the beneficial properties are noted, but as we know, life forms are prone to constant mutation, if you know what I mean. As the University of Pennsylvania states in the journal BMC Evolutionary Biology, the fungus parasite that invades insects turns ants into zombies. It secretes a special cocktail of chemicals that only affect the brain of a certain type of insect. It does not affect other ants. Scientists have been able to extract a substance from the infected insect's brain called guanidine oily acid. This substance can cause epileptic seizures even in large animals. By the way, this substance can also be found in another fungus called Trogia venenata, which can affect humans upon contact. That is, some substances work poorly on humans for some reason, while others work beneficially. It seems that the cordyceps fungus is a mysterious and poorly understood organism that has the ability to infect and control the behavior of certain insects. When it comes to humans, the effects of the fungus are unclear and more research is needed. In The Last of Us, the cordyceps fungus has caused a pandemic that has destroyed the world as we know it. There are several ways to become infected in the game, including inhaling spores or being bitten by an infected individual. Inhaling spores is the most common way to become infected. The spores are not visible to the naked eye and can be found in large growths on walls and ceilings. These growths are actually the remains of infected humans who have gone through all the stages of infection, from runners to clickers, and so on, and have eventually decayed into the fungal growths. Once inhaled, the spores can quickly infect a person, and within a few days, the symptoms of infection will begin to manifest. Being bitten by an infected individual is another way to become infected. This is what happens to Ellie at the beginning of the first game, and it is also shown in the TV series. In most cases, being bitten would lead to the infected person's eyes popping out and their brain becoming overtaken by the fungus, resulting in death. However, Ellie is immune to the infection and does not suffer these symptoms. It is unclear why Ellie is immune to the infection, and no other immune individuals have been found in the game. This adds to the mystery of the cordyceps fungus and highlights the need for further research into this fascinating organism. But Ellie is more of an exception. A typical infected in the game follows the script of an insect, although everything in humans happens much slower. The infection makes its way to the brain of the infected, after which they gradually lose control over themselves. On the first day of infection, this may manifest as anger and irritability, and after a week the cordyceps can completely take over the mind and will of the host body. And then the transformation occurs in stages. It is unknown what would happen if, for example, the bitten hand were cut off. The only way to defeat the virus was at the end of the first part of the game, but let's not spoil the plot for those who haven't played the game and are just watching the series. In conclusion, I want to answer the question, can cordyceps transfer to humans in real life? In the game and series universe, people became infected due to products with a mutated form of this fungus. In our world, this fungus has been used to improve athletic performance for quite some time, and so far, no aggressive and inadequate fungal people have been noticed on the streets of the cities. However, its effect on the human body is still not fully understood, but the fact that cordyceps is an extremely cunning thing is not in doubt. Just look at the latest research where scientists still do not understand what triggers the growth of fungi from insects after spores enter their bodies. If you are interested in me making a separate video on how realistic the scenario of the epidemic from The Last of Us is for humans and what is the likelihood that the fungus could mutate and wipe out a large part of humanity, write in the comments, and I will definitely tell you about it.